The Culture of the United States and Canada. This would be Chapter 6 from our World Geography and Cultures textbook. So we're going to start off with the United States of America. So when we look at the United States, we're going to first look at its population patterns. The United States has over 300 million people in the United States. Reasons why people come here: political freedom, religious freedom, and to flee wars and other disasters in their home countries. Density of our country, 80 people per square mile. Large urban areas like New York City, Chicago, and Philadelphia have higher population densities than the 80 per square mile. The Sun Belt, known for largest growing areas, New Mexico, California, and Arizona, because of the nice weather and temperate climate, more and more people are moving to the Sun Belt out west. And urbanization is this trend from moving rural to urban living. And the suburbs have also been growing. And with urbanization and suburbs, they have come together and starting to form large cities like Chicago, where the suburbs and the city and the rural areas are starting to become more and more combined and connected. History and government. 1607 to 1701, the United States was pretty much just British colonies, 13 original colonies stretching from New England colonies all the way down to the southern colonies in Georgia. Early forms of self-government, the Virginia House of Burgesses. If you remember from your study of U.S. history on a standalone course, the Virginia House of Burgesses was one of the first forms of representative government. Each colony had different geographic advantages and disadvantages. Like in the New England colonies, timber and fishing helped make them successful. Middle colonies had fertile soil for growing, and the southern colonies had rich soil and long summers great for the plantations that would rise up there. Continued, we had the American Revolution that ran from 1775 to 1783. This is where American colonists won independence from Great Britain. And in 1787, the Constitution of the United States is written. In 1789, the Bill of Rights is added to the Constitution. This serving as the framework for the American government, and the Bill of Rights being a great document that outlines the first 10 amendments to the Constitution that show the individual rights of the citizens of the United States of America. Some of the modern challenges that the United States has had to contend with: terrorism, the September 11th attacks. That was over 13 years ago now. And here we have is a map of the growth of the United States during this time period of expansion, Manifest Destiny, 1783 to 1853. And we see how the colonies have grown into states, and from states into a country, from sea to shining sea. Florida has been added in the 1819, Texas, Mexico secession. So as you look at this, you just see how by 1853 the United States really takes shape. And here's a collage of pictures from September 11th, 2001. A very hard day for many Americans. And many of you that are watching this right now probably weren't even alive, or maybe were so young that you don't remember this day, but it's very important. It changed the face of America and the world. The culture of the United States. First off, language and religion. English is the main language in the United States, but it is not an official language. There is no official language in the United States. Just because it's the norm or the most common does not mean it is the right and only language that we should speak. Many different religions practiced within the United States, thanks to our First Amendment for allowing freedom of religion. Education, public and private, literacy rate of 97% in the United States. And arts, we have many different art outlets in the United States. Jazz is a unique American music form. Places like Los Angeles, New York City, and Chicago are cultural centers of America, just to name a few. But if you go through any city, town, suburb, There's arts and music and acting and different types of outlets for artistic expression. And family life. The standard of living in the United States is so much higher than the rest of the world. It probably only is rivaled by Western Europe and parts of Asia. One thing that I didn't add on here for culture would be our fascination with sports. So those of you that are listening that are big Bears fans or Notre Dame fans or Bulls, Blackhawks, Yankees, Cubs, Sox, that's a big part of who we are, is our sports, because it gives us something to look forward to, something to take our mind off of things. So all these have related to culture. Now we move to Canada. So in Canada, the population has grown in a very different way than the United States. Many Canadians can trace their ancestry from a variety of sources. Many of those sources would be Native Americans. There's been Native Americans in Canada for a very long time. Loyalists during the American Revolution. Many of those American colonists that felt that they would not like to be free from Great Britain moved to Canada. Former French colonists. Canada originally was a French colony. And so many of them have stuck it out in Canada. Many of them live in what is modern-day Quebec and Quebec City. Inuit, Arctic Native Americans. And Canada is broken up into provinces. These are similar to states, but just a little bit different because of the parliamentary government. And major urban areas in Canada are Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Edmonton. Now, natives have lived in Canada for over 200,000 years. The first Europeans came around 1000 AD, Leif Erikson, with more Europeans coming during the 14 and 1500s. Leif Erikson was a Viking explorer that founded Newfoundland and set up some colonies there, but went back to Norway and Sweden and Scandinavia. Canada is a parliamentary government where the legislative branch is the main focus. The executive branch comes out of the legislative branch with a prime minister. Modern challenges, NAFTA, and issues with Quebec and separatism. Quebec being a French-speaking province, which does speak English as well, but primarily French as the main dialect, has always wanted to become its own province. And NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Now we have a map of the Canadian provinces. Over on the eastern side, we have St. John's, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia. And as we move across, we have Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia. And then we have some territories, the Nunavut, Northwest, and Yukon Territory. And now we have a picture of a treat from Canada. It's poutine. It's French fries and gravy, and this picture looks like it might have some cheese curds as well. Culture. Now, the language is officially French and English. The religion, many Christians, but there are still Buddhists, Hindus, and Muslims. And healthcare, the Canadian government helps pay for healthcare. It's subsidized, similar to what the United States is moving towards with our Affordable Care Act. And Canada has an extremely large amount of famous musicians and actors that have come from Canada. And if you do a simple Google search for Canadian actors or Canadian musicians, you'll find out that many of your favorite actors, like Ryan Reynolds, Justin Bieber, Bryan Adams, which many of you probably wouldn't know, have come from Canada.